All right, welcome. This is the monthly gathering call. And before I hit record here, I was just mentioning how it's always a roll of the dice to when there's so much going on in summertime. For those of you who don't know me and you're accessing the replay, I am the creator of Mad to Glad Blueprint. So I'm Samantha Moe, and my passion is talking about ways to create more peace and positive connection at home. It's an interesting consideration this summer. There's a lot of, I don't know how many of you are signed up for email articles, and there's kind of this funny balance between blogs on enjoying your summer, like how to make the most out of summer vacation. And I sent one of those out earlier this week myself. It's kind of a balance between that and don't put anything else on your schedule. Like don't do any to-dos, because at this point, it's starting to feel like the tail end of summer. It's like a fast pace, right? So in that consideration, what we do on this monthly gathering call, it's a space to get together to talk about emotionally intense kids. And it's a unique space because if somebody is not raising an emotionally intense kid, they don't get it. And that's not judgment on them, but I had seen an Instagram comment the other day. There was a really wonderful conference that I like to sign up for every single year. And they were talking about repairing disrupted relationships that parents might have with their kids. And it's a happily family conference. I think it's free. It's usually, they have really great speakers like Dr. Dan Siegel and Dr. Bruce Perry, who's really known for his neurosequential model and being trauma informed. And I've studied with both of them. And somebody had commented, it was the very first comment, and there are thousands of comments, but the very first one that showed up was, if you have to repair a disruption in your relationship with your child, you've done something wrong. And I was like, I get it, but at the same time, I feel like parenting is such a sensitive topic. And Ginny, we'll go into it. I saw your form that you filled out. But when you have a kid who's strong-willed or has bigger emotions, it's not the same. It's not just authoritarian parenting, laying down the boundaries. There's some nuances involved. And even when I think about summertime, then I think about, well, how do you make the most out of summer? Parents who have kids that have difficulties with focus, with energy levels, but like too energetic, with some sensory challenges, maybe they have some sort of diagnosis like ADHD, sensory processing disorder, they're autistic. What happens is summer can feel really dreadful. And so I just wanted to open up our call with that to say how we experience summer if we grew up in a household that was mainstream or neurotypical or kind of common authoritarian parenting is different than when there's a household with an emotionally intense child or adult. It's different than the way we were raised, and modern life is a lot busier. I came home from my vacation weekend in the woods. I turned 41 this last weekend, and we stayed in a tiny cabin in rural Wisconsin. And it was so nice to be unplugged by necessity because there was no signal. Actually, there was signal, but we really geek out on the holistic side of things. So we unplugged the Wi-Fi so that we just looked out these big bay windows right into the woods and looking at this lake. And as soon as I got in the car, we drive an hour out of the woods into the main highway, Highway 94 here, going from Wisconsin to Minnesota. I had all these text messages coming in. I'm like, oh, that's okay. There's going to be a lot of happy birthday messages. That's pleasant. But then I had, all these red Facebook notifications about, again, birthday messages and WhatsApp messages and emails coming through. And don't forget LinkedIn. And it was just like, what is summer for? How do we really make the most of summer, and not in a tongue-in-cheek, like, 4 tips to make the most out of your summer vacation. Again, I literally sent that email yesterday. So that's true. Like there's overarching principles, but it's like, how can we look at our relationship with our kids in modern life with their brain wiring, with the healing that we've done as parents and grandparents regarding our own childhood? Like, how do we make the most out of summer given all of that? So Ginny, welcome. As I mentioned to you, I would love for you to unmute if you want to riff with me on this, and know that, we have 20 people sign up for this. So maybe half of them, at least half of them are going to access the replay as we're having this conversation, but this is a space to serve. So I'm here to serve, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, I'm real excited because of course I've been attending your workshops, receiving your emails, and I get excited every time one comes through because it's like, oh, I'm going to learn something new. But I think my biggest challenge is reconciling the fact, and it was very interesting. I was listening to a webinar about twice exceptional 2E. You've probably heard that. And
oh yeah.
And so my oldest daughter, brilliant, just brilliant, photographic memory, straight A's, quote unquote, if she would apply herself or if she would try harder. And I'm listening to this recording, like bawling through the whole thing, realizing, like you just said, if you're having to repair that relationship, you've done something wrong. And you've met her, but I have a wonderful daughter, and we have a really, really good relationship now. And of course, her and her husband, excuse me, I'm going to get a tissue, but that have created 4 neurodiverse in their own little way children that from their union, and she's of course on this journey of learning how to I call it unparent, how I parented her. And so sometimes I'm sitting there and I'm like, this could be easier if, but then I realized that it wasn't easy for me either. And so
can you say that again?
Yeah.
So grandma says it would be easier if, however, it actually wasn't easy for me.
No. And so, kudos to her. And I'm very blessed by the fact that we live 10 minutes away. She's 10 minutes from my work. She's actually on my way home. So a lot of times I'll stop by after work and help with dinner time and sometimes bedtimes and stuff like that. Her husband works nights, and she's got it all, and all the responsibility in the evenings. But anyway, so that was my question. The last time we had one of these, was how do you determine between this child has just learned the system and knows a meltdown is going to get all the extra attention and all the extra to be able to do the extra things that they want to do. And I'm realizing as I'm writing this question is that I know behaviors I know all the, the phrases and the catchphrase. Behavior is, communication. And I know that these little brains are on fire. And I know all of this. And I guess that's where I'm trying to do what I can to assist her in her endeavor to kind of learn her. And she knows her children so much better than I do, obviously. She knows what their schedule was like during the day. And, when I was parenting, it was like, I know you're tired. However, that's no way to, treat your sibling. And I'm realizing that, oh my gosh, they were just trying to communicate. They were overwhelmed and they were, and so I guess that's kind of where I'm at, is like, where do you navigate that? And I, without telling you specific situations, it's really kind of hard to really ask that question, or really probably hard for you to answer the question. But anyway.
Oh no, I got thoughts.
Okay.
I'm
got
good
thoughts?
I'm like pulling up visuals on the screen behind and all of that.
Perfect.
Yeah, I have questions. So we'll riff on this.
Okay.
And it's funny because this is it's a little bit of a tangent, but just to open up a little bit, there have been some work opportunities with possibly like me doing some spots on TV shows or doing some media like that. And basically media personalities need to have be up to date with the news of the moment so that they can comment on anything. And I was literally talking to a lady who is one of the hosts of WCCO. She's raising autistic children. She has her own podcast. We were just talking on the phone this morning, networking, about how she is wired to be able to stay up on the news of the day. And I was like, oh, that's really helpful to hear, because I'm not. What I'm wired to do is I'm wired to facilitate conversation and riff on what helps parent-child interactions. Like, so with what you're saying, I'm happy to riff on it. And because I see Kelly here, just to give you the lay of the land, Kelly, Ginny has been here before. We've been in each other's in conversation with each other in the past. So there will be space for you to ask a question if you would like, or contribute. The whole structure of this this conversation online here, or this gathering, is what's happening with kids, how are we perceiving it, what might be something we could do as a step to move forward. And it's a service offering. It's a way for me to share my time. And if you needed more information, sometimes hit one nail on the head and you're like, I'm good to go for a month, I'll see you next month. And sometimes you're like, can I get like a whole thing? So if that becomes relevant, I'll share it at the end. So if you have a question right off the bat, Kelly, I did read your form, so I have a little tiny snapshot of what you might be curious about. So as we're going, I'm going to talk to Jenny for a little bit, but type your question in the chat box, and as it comes up, and I will be sure to circle back with you. Sound good? Cool. Okay. So Jenny, okay, so here's what I heard, and I wrote some of these things down. So your daughter is doing unparenting work herself, which in my book, that can mean anything, but for a lot of us who are of my-ish age and then had parents your-ish age, right? Like, we're 30s and 40s and parents are 50s, 60s, or 60s and 70s often, 50, 60, 70. Unparenting can often mean that there was an authoritarian model where we had certain expectations for you to obey. Thank you for raising your hand and acknowledgement. And the culture you were not raised in a home where it was deemed as a good thing to be soft with children. Like, yes, you are loving to them, but you have your boundaries. And authoritarian parenting, like the definition of that, if we were to say it kind of rudely, would be, I have expectations and I expect you to obey them, and I will not soften them to meet your needs. But what you've learned, and your daughter has learned, and this is going to influence her parenting, is that it's not just that you had to, like, softening your need, like parents softening their approach has had negative connotation to your generation. But in our generation, softening the approach basically means what you're saying. Behavior is communication. It is telling us something. And then when you start getting folks who geek out on brain science and being trauma informed like myself, we're also talking about, like, what is it communicating? And you know that in my model with Mad to Glad, I'm saying whenever there is challenging behavior, there's fire in the brain. And I'll say this for Kelly's benefit, and the 20 of you who will access the replay, downstairs brain is overactive, adrenaline and cortisol is flooding, that overrides behavioral management, pay attention, solve my own problem skills, whether it's because there's some sort of extra or special needs, or strong-willed personality and brain wiring. And so when folks in my generation are unparenting or healing from our own childhood, we're often trying to not step on children's voices. And there's a whole movement around gentle parenting and empathetic parenting, and that's good. But it's not the whole picture. And I think this is what you're feeling, but you might not have words for. So if I can share this visual, and then I'll open it up. Well, let me open it up. Do you have any comments on what I've said so far, Ginny? And Kelly, you're welcome to contribute too. Yeah.
Yes, I agree, because what happens is I come back to but there's got to be balance, and that was part of my question of,
I saw that.
like teaching them boundaries, teaching them responsibilities within their abilities. I completely understand that. But and maybe part of it is because she has so many of them, and they're all so very different, is that it seems like, I'm like talking, just even having another adult presence. I don't do a whole lot because I'm really trying to learn from her. And I talked to, her oldest daughter who's 12 or whatever, and who spends a lot of time in her room because of the, 7 through 4-year-old who, it's just a lot for her for sensory processing. She was actually recently diagnosed on the autism spectrum. And so we were just chatting about it. And I said, yeah, but I don't really do a whole lot. I mean, it's not like I do a whole lot. And she calls me Gigi. She goes, you bring the peace. You bring the peace.
Mhm.
So I don't know if it's just because I'm sitting on the couch that all the kids are like, and of course I want that to be a positive thing, not like we can't do that now because Gigi's here and we might get in trouble, and so that's kind of where I'm just trying to find my place in that grandma role. And plus, as you know, I am the children's pastor of birth through kindergarten kids. And I'm trying very much to get these, because we see the behaviors and just trying to get this paradigm shift changed in parents' minds that, your child's not doing this because he's trying to annoy you, or he's trying to, he needs, he needs help. So instead of looking at it as, I've got a brat that needs to be corrected, look at it as I've got a child that needs help. And so this, and just trying to kind of reconcile, like I said, my upbringing where you set the boundaries, you follow the rules, or there's consequences, which I now know equated to punishment, And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I don't want to parent that way. I don't want to teach my parents to parent that way. And so I'm just trying to learn, and not only my place, which is something obviously is just going to take time, but how can I support her,
Yeah,
through
I
all
love
of
that.
this?
I love that. Well, and what I hear is there are tools. So if we have a kid who needs help, there are certain tools, and that's my jam. Like tools are like, well, they say there's no parenting manual, and I always kind of bite my tongue a little bit. Like there's some pretty straightforward tools that are proven. So if we can take the stigma out of parents actually getting some tools in their tool belt, then like things can unfold more smoothly. And I'm going to talk about those in a moment, but there's a mindset piece. And sometimes what we're talking about, like your mindset work that you've done, I am so heartwarmed to hear you say, I'm kind of just listening. I'm learning, I'm taking it in. And I picture Gigi sitting on the couch with 3 little ones running around and stressed out, your daughter, the mother, and the 12-year-old hiding in her room. And I geek out on brain science again, because I think when there's a lot of fire in the brain and adrenaline and cortisol is flooding, when there are islands of calm, that is the brain having a pattern and an imprint of how to be self-regulated and calm. It's almost like the kid who goes to bed and they have their lovey or their soothing blanket or whatever it is. It's like, this is my thing that helps me know that I'm calm. So being a body in the room that helps people experience self-regulation from a neurological perspective lays that pathway. This is how your body feels calm. This is how it feels calm. Now that's external, and we want to move those cues to internal. But I think I want to say that there's benefit there. So when it comes to our mindset, when we're looking at the mindset of a parent who leans towards soft boundaries and gentleness and empathy, and Kelly, we might be talking about the opposite of that when we flip the conversation. But when we're talking about that, this is the other part of the picture that we need to know. And here's the mindset piece for us as parents. I'm raising a 3-year-old, so I'm in the thick of it right now. So for us, when we've done some healing or unparenting work ourselves, and we want to hear our kids' voices, and we know all behavior is communication, the gentle parenting approach, I would call that the bottom 2, what would I call these? Nuggets of the Mad to Glad blueprint. So if you're gentle parenting, you're practicing calm, you're not adding fuel to the fire, you're away, you might be doing some mindfulness things about breathing or walking away or your own prayer or meditation or yoga practice, so that you understand, I can't control my kids' outbursts, but I can influence them by not adding fuel to the fire. And that will teach them the self-calming pattern in their own body, like Gigi sitting on the couch. The other thing that's gentle and like in the positive parenting realm is avoiding fire starters. So am I refraining from things like saying no, like just off the tip of my tongue, nope, can't do that, nope, can't do that, and catching kids with what they're doing wrong? Or like my kid's name is Mason, so like, Mason, come over here. He's been playing with a jigsaw, like a power tool, like nope, don't pull on the cord, it's going to pull out. Nope, we don't pick it up. I don't want to drop on your toe. Nope, we don't do that. Like, am I avoiding starting phrases with no in his name? Because that will also add more fuel to the fire. So if you're taking a very gentle and positive approach, these are aspects of parenting that are principles. They're essential. They make a really big difference. They calm the downstairs fire in the brain, and the less adrenaline cortisol moments you have, then the greater opportunity you have for the happy things to start laying down neural pathways and developing more of a happy personality and relationship. So then we move up into the realm of middle brain skills, which is emotional connection. So this is in the emotional intelligence world. It's in the attunement world. Therapists know a lot about this as well. And then really good like play therapists and early child care providers know about happy chemicals. They know about following kids' lead, getting on the floor and playing with them. So when my upbringing, I grew up in a family, I have 4 siblings, so 7 of us were in the household. And so it was pretty rare for my mom to sit down and play on the floor with us. She was there. She is absolutely my model for unconditional love. And she knew to acknowledge me when I was sad. But when I had social anxiety so bad that I blacked out as a teenager before high school every day in 10th grade, she didn't know specifically that, wow, if I can be with Samantha and interact and play with her, whatever play looked like at that age, that helps me feel in charge, releases dopamine, and starts rewiring some of the stress and tension that she's experiencing in her body. If I could notice out loud, if she could have noticed, like, you feel really worried inside. So again, I see parents who are gentle and who are empathetic. They're often popping into this orange category as well. They're using some of those skills. But I was talking at the very beginning about the complications of modern day life. So even when you're intentional as a parent, building happy chemicals and spending 15 minutes of uninterrupted time monotasking and play with a kid with challenging behavior is often a missing piece. We're with our kids all day long. But that play makes a really big difference for also closing down the adrenaline pathway and giving more dopamine and oxytocin to have better listening, cooperation, and happiness. So what I'm guessing with what you're saying about your daughter is that she's schooled in some of these. If she's done therapy, if she's done coaching, if she's talked to the ECFE teacher, she will have heard nuggets of this. And then these next ones are often, these gray bars towards the top of the pyramid are often seen. These were actually often emphasized in the authoritarian parenting style, but they're also important. It's just that you don't want to only have these to the exclusion of the others. So this is where red light parenting is, how do I hold a boundary in a way that the child learns listening is required, not optional? The little scientist in the brain says, oh, red light, rules apply to me, I need to stop and listen. How do we do daily routines? Sometimes with picture schedules, if they're little. What is positive discipline so that we can say, no hurting. No. Like my almost 3-year-old knows, like, you threw that, you tried scratching and hurting my body. That is broke a rule, take a break in the room. Am I empathetic? Am I noticing he's upset? Do I stay with him during the break? Yes to all of those components. But like many families in the gentle and positive parenting world, there can be a lot of conversation around, hey, parents, dig deeper, just stay calm. And in the meantime, they're trying to get their one kid to put on their shoes and it's 40 minutes and they're throwing it across the yard or they're throwing it across the room, and the parents feeling like a failure because, well, I'm supposed to dig deeper. When truly, like, those green and orange skills from below matter, but you also need, how do we get our kids to listen? And then how do we resolve conflict? So not just we talk about it and we try to do better next time because everybody's in tears, but then there's no boundary where we know how to enforce that. And what I'm hearing you say, and then I'll open this up for reflections. What I'm hearing you say is she's got those downstairs she's explored those like lower parts of the brain pillars. All these gray ones are up here, like problem solving, self-control. And you don't want to address those too soon, because with a kid with sensory issue who has a lot of fire in his brain, if you're like, but here's discipline. If that noise hurts your ears, I don't care. You can't scream and have an explosive meltdown right here. It's like, well, but if you're adding fuel to the fire, that's not fair to say, now I have to discipline you when you hurt his ears in the first place. So there's a mix of these two things. And what I'm finding in the gentle and positive parenting world is not just the mindset shift around the healing that she's done to have her voice feel heard and for her to feel empowered as a grown-up parent, but there's also mindset shift of saying, and what are those pieces from boundary setting that apply? So what comments do you have, Ginny? And then Kelly, you're welcome to comment as well.
From my observation, I feel like that's what I'm feeling, what you just said. And then, of course, I look at her and kind of go, have you forgotten all this other stuff? You know, are there boundaries? Are there this? And it's interesting because just a real simple example is their youngest is a little boy, and he was very aggressive. There's some speech delays, but doing well now. But and it was kind of like I can't remember what the situation was, but my question to her was, which she had a great response, but was, you know, he needs to learn such and such and such. And I think it was, I don't know how he was treating somebody, or maybe it was obeying, I don't know. And I think that's what it was, around when he gets a boss, he's not going to be able to, you know, talk to them the way he's talking to you, kind of deal. And her response, he's 4, right? Or not even quite 4. Mm-hmm. And her response was, well, when the time comes, we're hoping that he's going to be learning those skills. And I thought, oh, okay. Yeah, that was a wise answer. So it's that kind of stuff. I think that I'm more like, you know, can I help her? And maybe she's just right on. Maybe she's right on task. Maybe and I feel like I'm accepting that more and more. And I like I said, you mentioned the play. I know, and I know this principle, right? I came from I was very abused all my life, long story. But so I have this trauma-based history. I never was allowed to be a kid. I never played. I didn't play. And so to sit down, we did all kinds of things. We were at the zoo, we were at the museum, we did all kinds of things when the kids, and those are some of her real fond memories. And so now I'm trying to recreate that with my grandchildren now but in all honesty, to sit down and play dolls with the kids is like, it's almost tormenting for me to play. And so she does that all the time. And then I look at her, wow. And then I get the text at, 6:30 when she's in the middle of dinner and whatever, that, she's kind of losing it. But I'm thinking, you are giving to these kids like all day long. And then there's the no self-care, and then she's stressed and she's whatever. And then she finds the balance. She kind of, goes to bed early. She does whatever. And, all the things we're supposed to do. But so I agree with what you're saying. I feel like I'm probably the one that's more trying to reconcile, all the things that you're saying is great and wonderful. And all the things that she's doing is great and wonderful. I do feel like her soft boundaries may be non-existent boundaries in some situations. But again, I'm the grandma. I don't have to be with them every day. So I understand that. And I feel like she's doing a great job. I just wanted, like I said, so what you're saying is, yes, I'm resonating with those thoughts and those feelings.
Yeah. And you care about her. And so this is the thing where I'm a master level certified parent coach, and I cannot coach my own family. I told you I have 4 siblings. And so there's a lot of little kids running around in my family at our events. And it's one of the hardest things. And it's kind of like, I would imagine she's shared some of these things that I've shared with you today, like the importance of some of her approach. And it's like when you go to the doctor with your spouse and the doctor's like, hey spouse, you need to do this. And you're like, see, I've been telling you. And the spouse is like, oh, I'll do it right away because the doctor told me to. So I see 2 things. I see, if this conversation is part of your mindset shift so that you can relax and be present and reparent yourself, getting on the floor playing. I mean, playing I don't think it's fun. In my head, I was like, I hope she says boring. I hope she says, because that's what I always think. I'm like, play is boring. I have to set a timer. And I mean, there's a few things I like there, but there's a lot of things I don't like. And there's probably also a boundary piece, because when we practice these relationship connection, seeing our kids, attunement, it's called, for emotions, attunement strategies, it will suck our energy. So we either need to do a little bit less of that so that we're not over giving from an empty well, or we need to boost our capacity so that we're able to have energy after dinner time in order to also set boundaries, because that's the time kids are going to keep pushing because they're getting tired too. There's, all of that sets in. So I think you're right on both sides. And I don't have a specific, like, here's how you set boundaries, because it's all kind of part of the program, and like learning that balance with self-care. And one random thing popped into mind for me, which was, I wonder what would happen in your parent-child relationship if for the month of August, when you felt that criticism about her lack of boundaries, the way that you see it, I wonder what would happen if you took a breath. So feel your tension around her lack of boundaries literally right now. I'm going to have you take 4 breaths. Okay. Okay. So picture lack of boundaries, and Kelly, join us. Picture a situation that's really frustrating for you. Like, feel that tension building up. I'm picturing Gigi sitting on the couch watching this unfold. And now what I'm going to want you to do is I want you to picture softness in your body. And start your 4 breaths at your own pace. Just breathe fully in and fully out. You don't have to control it in any way. Okay. 26 seconds. I wonder what would shift if you took 26 seconds to take 4 breaths when you felt that criticism, because the room can change when there's more love and less criticism. And this is something that I talk to parents who are in my programs as well, not just about that kind of a breath and actually like implementing it, but finding an affirmation to give. And it doesn't have to be in that moment. Like in that moment, your work is to recognize your own criticism because there's fire in your brain, and take 26 seconds worth of breath. And then in another moment, like really focus on what she's doing well. You know that she's sitting on the floor playing with her kids. So what an amazing compliment to say, you know what? I'm impressed the way that you sit on the floor with the kids. That would torment me to play in that way. I think you're a great mom. That can also be filling and renewing the capacity to, as she's walking this path, to have more energy and more tools for better boundaries.
I do those things. And when like, and I think that's why the older daughter, I just guess I wasn't feeling like I was making a difference or I was helping. Even though I have those thoughts in my head, I don't, well, I shouldn't say I don't get stressed out, because I do. And do I recognize it when I do? There are times where it's like, I will leave the home early and just say, I'm sorry, I don't have the spoons for this today, which she knows. And there's also some history. I am continuing to recover from a pretty intense assault on my body. About a year and a half ago, I had sepsis. I was in the hospital for like 9 weeks, and organs started shutting down, the whole shebang. And so I get triggered very easily now. And so I'm very aware of that. And so is she. But anyway, with all of that being said, I think that that's why our relationship is as good as it is, because I do think she's can be negative to herself. But I think she's a wonderful mom. I just think that she's, she does such a great job. I would like to see her care for herself more. I don't necessarily have the answers to that, because usually that means that then I have to do more, and I can't always physically do that quite yet, do a lot more than I can or have, but still kind of the post sepsis syndrome stuff going on. But anyway, that's very good reminder, because again, the anxiousness that I feel, kind of like, as opposed to correcting or suggesting or anything like that with her, because I know her relationship with me is, I always have an opinion. And for her growing up, some of the things that she's been able to share with me is that she could never meet my expectations. And so I'm very, very careful about questioning her methods, or, how she's handling things, or anything like that. I'm kind of more in the observation, and I will make comments about, I think, she is a wonderful mom, and she's doing such a great job. I guess, not only for her, but many of the parents that I'm working with, when they come to me and they're so exasperated, and of course you're my Samantha mode. So it's like I've got it like on auto text. Here, check this out, and but I refer my parents to you all the time. But anyway, so yeah, so what you're saying is definitely true. I think that I can be more conscious of breathing, calming down, because maybe I can have, the 12-year-old, like I said, recognizes it, but do the littles, I don't know,
And what we have to get to, feels like what we do in our parenting journeys, whether we're, my generation or your generation, is we get to, we don't always get feedback. And that's why I no longer do one-on-one parent coaching exclusively, and I do group programs, because we need to hear from other parents and come to places where we can talk about what's real. Because once we start expecting our younger kids to give us that feedback that it's working, you will always be disappointed. And it's too big of an ask to ask our kids to tell us that what we're doing is working. So I'm really glad that you're here. And I want to make some space for Kelly, but before I do, I also want to share, Jenny, that it's valuable for us to see somebody who is it's valuable for everybody to see people in multiple generations. And I don't mean to say that as if you're old, because you're not. Like, you're very youthful and you're very talented, and I mean, like, there's so many lovely things about you. And even you bringing your voice to the conversation of recognizing that your daughter is unparenting. A lot of us don't have that experience of our own mothers witnessing us parenting differently and still being in the learning phase to let us become who we are. So thank you for bringing that to the table. Yeah. And I wanted to also comment, it's a beautiful compliment that you send them to my site. Thank you. And pay attention to some emails we're going to send out late August or September. This October, when I lead my 8-week parenting cohort, side by side, I'm also offering a parent educator certification that grants permission for people who go through it to teach my 8-week course on location. So if that's something that interests you, reach back out to me, because I'm happy to have in community at your church if that's valuable for you. Great. All right, Kelly. Well, Kelly, you probably, I don't know what you had to do to carve out this space, but thank you for being here.
They're on the tablet and my other one's sleeping. So,
Okay.
We limit screen time for such occasions.
That's it. That's right. So, Kelly, I recognize your name, And I don't know how long you've been we've been in circling each other's space.
Yeah, I've been getting your emails for a while. I was trying to think of how I even received your information, but
Yeah.
something probably, I don't know. Is there a nutritionist that sends out your stuff? I'm blanking on her. Julie
There,
Matthews, maybe.
I know I
Anyway,
know it, Julie. It
so
could be.
I've seen your emails for a while, and then I finally
Yeah.
saw the one about the meet, and so I was like, oh, because I've been working on this for a very, 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 very long time.
Oh, I hear it. I hear you, honey. Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
just tried everything, and
Yeah.
we're still here.
Well, why don't you share with me? I see what you've written. So, we have space, we have time. Take your time as you're sharing. I see you.
So take my 4 breaths again. So my daughter is 8, almost 9. She has Down syndrome.
Yeah.
And ever since I remember bringing her to speech at like 2 years old, she was very aggressive, like would go up to other kids and hit up. And then we had our other daughter when she was 3. And that, I should go upstairs. Keep looking at me.
Yeah. And you're welcome to. You're welcome to transition.
So quickly after, we started with, so we were in early intervention and working on, hands are for high fives and saying hi and hugs. And then it transitioned once we had our daughter, I don't know, out of jealousy or.
Yep, I think that's a good decision.
Out of jealousy or what it was, but she was hitting her sister a lot. And try not to react, of course, especially with Down syndrome. They say respond, but don't react. But it just never seemed to work. And finally, last spring, we checked thyroid levels. We checked, which she has hypothyroidism.
Yep.
We checked all of these things constantly to see, the medical. And then at school, it's, you used to be just at home fine, but then she started hitting kids at school and at the park. So we started trying different medications. We tried guanfacine, which made her super sleepy. And then once that wore off, she started getting paranoia of bugs. And then she's.
Oh. Yeah. I think your signal's not as good in this new room.
Started sleeping really badly. He had to be aggressive and like.
Okay, I'm gonna text you, Kelly, in case you can't hear me. That's always hard when somebody's right in the middle of opening up. All right, that I messaged you, Kelly. We'll see if that comes through. Kelly, can you see that? Yep, that's okay.
Yep. Is that better?
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
I sure see a lot of people's houses these days on Zoom, and I like it. As we're chasing our signal.
Oh, that's funny. So yeah, we tried homeopathy and we were still
I
working
think that's
with
how we know each other. I think we know each other through a homeopath.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that's been helpful, but I feel like either A, I'm not on top of doing it because I'm like, oh, she just ate. Oh, wait. And then we wait and I forget. And then this whole thing. Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you. Oh, thank you, girl. That was very sweet. And so, but then it feels like every couple of weeks we're getting a new dose. And this is Madeline. Say hi.
Hi. Hi, Madeline.
And the aggression just keeps continuing and the impulsivity. Like the other day, we had a friend over who also had Down syndrome and they were playing, which I thought right off the deck. I couldn't see her, but after like a minute or two, I was like, oh, we should go check on her. And she bolted. Like she ended up running to our neighbor's house and then through the park and up and around the block. And horrifying. And then she tried taking off again. We have alarms on our doors, and you can play a game, Josie. Josie, it's Madeline's turn. And
Madeline notices mama's feelings, huh?
yes,
Mhm,
very much.
mhm.
Which is the hard part, because I grew up in a house. My mom was very loving, but farm family. I had 4 older brothers who were just, hellions.
Oh dear.
But she yelled a lot. She was a yeller. I've definitely become a yeller, and I don't want to be a yeller. I did therapy for a while, and that helped. But I just can't stop reacting to every time she hits one of my kids, other kids, or another kid at a park. And it is like, I know I need to fix myself before I can fix, help her, but I feel like it's this double-edged sword where no matter what I do, we can't make any progress. And we've had this woman coming. I guess she's a behavior she's I don't think she's a licensed therapist, but she was a guidance counselor and stuff, and she's been coming since October, and nothing's changed. And I don't know how to end that, but
Yeah. Well, like I said earlier, I think you caught it when I was with Ginny. I can riff. There's a lot of
Yeah.
threads that I heard. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. I'm glad we're talking. I'm glad you're here.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'm reminded to take like a more of a 10,000-foot view just in general of having a child with aggressive behavior and impulsivity. I'm reminded of growing up, we had cousins who had special needs, Fragile X, Down syndrome. And so these behaviors you're talking about, I feel a bit transported back to my childhood and knowing like, oh, Michael's going to pinch. Like if you get within arm's distance, Michael's going to reach out and pinch. If a baby cries, Michael's going to pinch. And that's what it was. And so I want you to know that I can hear how many resources you've put into this. And the behavior is not 100% equal sign. Aggression and impulsivity equals you are being a bad parent and don't know what the heck you're doing. Some of it is related to Down syndrome. And some of that I can't predict. I actually don't specialize in Down syndrome, but I'm familiar from my family sphere. Some of that might stay with her. That might be one of those trigger pieces for her. Just like some kids are like, oh my gosh, police siren. And they go like this the rest of their lives. It's like an impulsive response. So if you wanted to talk about like holistic resources like body work, one of my favorite things for impulsivity and aggression is a gentle neurological chiropractic technique. But you've also put in a lot of money and time with resources and addressing her behaviors and what she needs.
We actually both go to a neurological chiropractor.
Oh, you do? Where? What city?
Lino Lakes, Minnesota. Dr.
Jamie.
Yep, you got it.
Yeah, we know. I got goosebumps. He's amazing. Wonderful.
He's wonderful.
Very happy. So you're saying, okay, so you got these bases covered. And one of the things that I've heard from so many families who have like parent educators coming into the home for different reasons or working with kids is that they often have something like 4 times a week set aside for the kid and then the 20-minute debrief for the parent session every single month, which is really just talking about the kid. It's still not exactly talking about you. And your ability to open up and talk about you right now is something that I'm not taking lightly. I think that's a really big deal. And has anybody ever told you that when she hits, you can do like a positive discipline, time in, interrupt the behavior and be firm about it? Or have you been discouraged from doing something like that?
I feel like we've tried timeouts. We've tried, trying to say hands are for hugs, hands are for high fives. We've tried stepping in between and like, I won't let you hurt.
So those things are all relevant and necessary from the social skills aspect, that's going to be, you're like, that recording is going to play tens of thousands more times. So it's kind of like with Ginny, like, take a breath, say it again. How do you fall in love with, does it have to be sing-songy? I'm so tired of reading If You Give a Mouse a Cookie. I started singing it. Hands aren't for hitting, hands are for high five. And one of the things that is common that I've seen in Downs, again, even though I'm not a Downs specialist, meaning haven't researched Down syndrome, is that I've read and learned about how that personal connection is exciting, whether it's negative feedback or positive. And from a parenting angle, that's where I'm noticing there's probably a gap. Is I'd be really curious from the ground up. You remember how I showed these 8 pillars? I'll pull them up again for you. I saw her briefly, so that gives me some sense of her language abilities. And my background is speech language pathology. That was my trade.
Yeah, her full sentences didn't really start until like the last year and a half. So I know communication's a huge part of it.
Yeah, it's a huge part of it, but you still have permission to create boundaries. And I wish, if I had just the discipline program as a standalone, I wish that would be enough for families, but it sounds like there's a bit of this calming the fire in your own brain and in her brain. Plus there's going to be some happy chemical work probably for you to enjoy the parenting experience, plus some positive discipline. So I'm wondering, what question of yours can I answer now that would help you feel like this was a good use of you showing up? And I'm happy to do a one-on-one conversation too later if you would like to.
Sure. I guess you say setting those positive disciplining, setting those boundaries. How would you frame it when she hits somebody else? What would you say and do?
Yeah, good. I'm going to take you back 2 steps because what you're saying and doing is correct. So I'm going to take you back 2 steps. One of the steps is creating your family rules on a visual poster.
Okay.
There's no hitting / hurting for a lot of families with externalized behaviors, not as common in Downs, but like no screaming.
Yeah.
And no back talk.
Oh, sure.
At her age and with 3 kids, those are the things that I would expect to show up. Am I on track at all?
One, yes.
Okay, good. Take my camera out of your home. No. So when you go back a step, it's going to be important for her to have visual rules that you guys did in a fun way, because again, from the generalization of what I know about Downs, so correct me if I'm totally off, I'm trying not to speak in generalities only, is there can be a strong relationship motivator. So when you have something like a family meeting and you come up with the rules together, and we just kind of walk through that in a 1-hour session, the way that we do it, or in my online modules. And then you create a poster around it and you role play it. You practice, if you hit here, what will happen? So you're doing it in a way that's fun and playful, and you're capitalizing on her strength of relationship, connection, and playfulness.
Okay.
And then when you practice no hitting, you will have already role played the break spot in the room in the house, in each room, and what happens in public, and how when we're at the grocery store, we leave our groceries and we go cry outside, or in the car, or in the hallway, or right there where we are. And I crouch down and I practice the relationship principles of, I see you're mad and there's no hurting. We'll take our break to reset. So there's going to be a consistency here of, for a lot of families with neurotypical children, they'll see change in 2 weeks with like a complete positive discipline overhaul. She could be a month before you're like, oh, it's sinking in. And I say that actually to give you hope, not to be disheartening, but like that kind of, I'm going to say this word, it doesn't sound good, but that kind of conditioning, like there's enough repetition where mom's calm and said, broker will take a break, and withstood the 20, 40, 50 minute screaming fits of resistance. new neural wiring happens. Conditioning happens around. I've seen this with kids who are nonverbal, who are pre-verbal, who are autistic, who are bigger than their parents. I've seen it happen over and over again in the last 19 years that I've been doing it. So yeah, feel free to
And I
comment on
guess
that.
my other question is, how, I guess, again, is me staying calm and not reacting, and how to remember that when, things are getting heated. Like, do you have any advice on keeping myself calm? Because the breaths don't always help.
No, and I think breaths, I mean, in some moments it works really well. And in some moments I'm like, whatever, that's like taking out the kid's breathing ball and they throw it at you. Like, this is not going to work right now. It's not enough. I don't want this to sound flip, so let me share. I'll say it. I'll just share the punchline and then give you context. Don't change your parenting alone. Don't try to just go and do a discipline system and practice calm. You might need to be in a community of parents who are all growth oriented and practicing step by step. Like, okay, this week we're focusing on simply not adding fuel to the fire. And you do it for a week. And then we walk up the pyramid, and we say, okay, now we're going to practice not adding fuel to the fire. So you'll identify what that is in your family with your different kids.
Mhm.
And then you practice that for a week. And then we say, now let's layer in happy chemicals. So we work our way up so that by the time positive discipline we get there, we've actually done these internal rewiring things ourselves and felt the support of other loving parents who love their kids too, but are struggling to get the pieces to fit. And it's a philosophy that I use not just in my business and my parenting cohorts, but I use it in my personal life. It's called Kaizen. So Kaizen means, it's two Japanese words put together that basically means small changes over time. If you try to make too big of a change, your own nervous system is going to be like, too big, homeostasis, even if homeostasis sucks. And so it's like, how do we get you these baby wins? Because then by the time you get to positive discipline, you're like, I'm refreshed. I got this. I'm only doing it a week at a time. And then after we do these 8 pillars, you get to repeat them again, but we space them out more. Like, that's kind of, that is my answer to the question. Okay. Maybe don't do it alone.
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Ginny raised her hand, and Ginny, I see your question about what would positive discipline look like if a child was aggressive towards another child. And
you really kind of answered the question. I followed through with what you were saying with her, and yeah.
Great. Yeah, you still follow through. And sometimes you, Kelly's talking about having 2 younger kids. And so sometimes what we do is, yes, we separate the older child, but sometimes you have to go to the younger kid first so that they feel protected. Right. And so you're always reading all of those things in the moment. And if you have the capacity to be calm and you practice that skill and you're feeling more refreshed and capable in that, now this kid who got hurt is also going to feel more resilient, because they're not like, she's doing it again. They're just like, oh, yep, she did it again. Because we have to tell her 1,000 times, hands are not for hitting. Hands are not for hitting. Like, there's all these pieces that play together. Yes, go ahead, Jenny.
The reason I raised my hand before is because what Kelly was saying really resonated with me. Because I used to be a yeller. I mean, triggered constantly. And so we kind of sat down, and I don't know if this would work with her daughter diagnosed with Downs, but we sat down, we had kind of like the family meeting and talked about the yelling and how it makes others feel, and how we were all going to be accountable to one another. And which is very hard when you've got, my 2 oldest were 4 and 5. I was pregnant at the time with my 3rd. And I found that it was just too much to do anything. So you just scream at them. And, but it was very interesting to have that little 5-year-old look at you and go, you're yelling, Mom, and because it was so hard to change the habit, and you just kind of fell back into it. And so then we just kind of went through the process of, you're right. What I'm saying, I really mean, but I don't need to say it the way I'm saying it. And that's what helped me get over that habit. I had
Yeah.
several, but because it then became easier to calm myself, check myself, and not yell than it was to lose it, yell, and then get corrected by the 5-year-old, and then have to go through the process of, I'm very sorry. Do you forgive me? You know, and it really just kind of made me do a paradigm shift. And I don't know.
I forgot. Yeah, I forgot I forgot that side benefit with the family rules. I was actually scanning because I'm intuitive. And so I'm like, what am I noticing here? And you told me on the form the ages of your kids, Kelly. And I was like, oh, okay. So what are the rules when you have an 8, 5, 2-year-old and 2 parents? And the 8-year-old has some aggressive behavior and impulsivity, yelling. And I was scanning, like, who's yelling? Is it the 5-year-old? Is it the 8-year-old? Is it the mom? Is it the other parent? Is it this? Is it that? So what Ginny is saying is absolutely true. And one of the reasons that positive discipline, when you've worked your way up in your own parenting shift, why it works is because it applies to the whole family. It's not just this child broke rule, take a break, because that fingers pointing at you, this poster belongs to you, child, creates a retaliation response.
Sure.
Yeah. So would it be valuable if I shared briefly 2 parent programs that I offer that you don't have to make any decisions about it, but the description of them?
Mhm.
Yeah. The one of the programs I offer is the Mad to Glad Blueprint DIY. So it's 8 pillars, it's online, everything's pre-recorded, you can go through at your own pace. And if that program is a match for you, we actually just added a gift of 2 free months in my coaching community membership. So that means if you're like, I need this program, I want to hop right over to positive discipline, it's pillar 5, you can hop, or I'm sorry, it's pillar 7, you can hop right there and listen to it. And it's step-by-step instruction on how to implement it before, during, after, including troubleshooting videos. And each module is an hour long.
Okay.
So if you wanted that, you could, and you get 2 free months in the Mad to Glad coaching community. So that means you could show up and ask your questions.
Okay.
Like I coach directly in that community, and it's a way for you. It's $4.95.
Okay.
Coaching community is $129 a month. It's included. So you're half, you're getting that free. The other option is I teach a live cohort where all together we go through the 8 pillars, so that there's accountability, there's deep dives, there's small group works over Zoom as well. And you have this like really nice focused period. We launch at the end of October for this year. So it's 8 weeks of that, plus an additional 4 months in the coaching community where we repeat each pillar, but every 2 weeks, so that you get really good at it for another season. That program, if it interests you, this summer I'm doing early access. So you get access to everything now instead of waiting for October. You get DIY plus coaching community until the cohort starts in October.
Okay.
So that on its own is a program that's $1,850.
Okay.
Or there's payment plans.
Sure.
So if either of those were a match, or you wanted to talk things through, I'll send an email with the replay of this, and we will, there'll be a link if you wanted to do a one-on-one chat for half an hour. Like, can we talk more about my family if it's a fit? And if it's not, that's okay. I still do these monthly calls, and you're welcome to be in community and kind of feel things out.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. So for both of you, I can't help it. I'm a coach. So what's one takeaway that you have before, and then we'll wrap up and say our goodbyes. What's a takeaway for yourself?
For me, the house rules with everybody, and actually having, we did a PC, parent-child interaction therapy a while ago, and we did some rules, but they were written down lightly, in a small piece of paper on the wall. So that wasn't very helpful. But doing that makes a lot of sense. And like you said, having everyone accountable.
And
there
put
have been
pictures
time-
next to them, not just the rules. Add pictures, add visuals.
Yeah, it makes sense. I have had my children call me out before for yelling, and it does humble you. I do try and go back and apologize when I yell. Not that it makes yelling okay, but so I think those, I guess, would be my huge takeaways.
Beautiful. I love it. And we're, if you ever want to send me an email update, hello@samanthamo.com. I'd love to
Okay.
hear it. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Jenny. How about for you?
I think my biggest takeaway is the unparenting, embracing my daughter for what she is going through in her unparenting journey while she's learning to parent her children. And it just makes me appreciate even more so the just her openness to not just cut me off, not only as mom, but as Gigi, to just kind of continue to work for that relationship and restore that relationship. I sent her a text this morning because as I was sharing with you earlier, listening to this workshop about the twice exceptional children and how she was so brilliant. And I'm just like, I'm sorry, I was so rigid. I'm sorry, I was so, and so she texted me back and she's kind of like, and she says, Mom, for all the things you didn't know when you were parenting, I'm so proud that you're continuing to learn and whatever. And I'm like, wait, I'm supposed to be encouraging, aren't you? So, but I think the takeaway from me is, because it's more of an internal thing where I just don't feel like I'm helping her enough, that to just continue to bring the calm and really recognize, am I bringing the calm or not? When I'm sitting on the couch and watching this and kind of questioning, what she's doing and why she's doing it, and just kind of just going back into just relaxing and doing what I can to support and be there. And I think the biggest thing as far as a takeaway is I need to play more. I need to get on the floor and play with the grandbabies. And that's one way I can contribute to that. Not only helping to relieve their stress and therefore mom's stress, and then also building that relationship, with them.
Beautiful.
So
Yeah. And then you unparent yourself because you weren't playing. Like there's like so many balls of yarn that are unraveling, which is beautiful.
Right. I'll let you know how it's working.
Sounds good. I plan on seeing you again. All right. Well, thank you both for joining me. It is a pleasure to share the work that I'm passionate about and get to hear your stories. And we'll send out an email and have the replay. I think it will probably go out tomorrow once it's processed. And if you need further support, I'm here. We'll have another one of these gathering calls next month. And I hope you enjoy the rest of summer.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye. You're welcome.